So welcome everybody. If you can go on video, it'd be great to see you and feel a sense of community here and know who I'm speaking to. That would be great. Thank you. And thank you for coming, some friends, some new people. Looking forward to sharing our adventure with you all today. I'm very excited that for the first time, we're going to have our cool cities with us, which we will hear from a little later as I tell the story of the Cool City Challenge. Siyama, welcome. Good to see your face again, your bright face.
Hi, David.
Here's how it will work. I'll share the Cool City Challenge story and our strategy for scaling. And then I'll have some time for Q&A. We are also having this on Facebook Live. So Miranda, you'll share any questions that are coming in through Facebook Live when I invite people to share. And then we'll have time to hear from our panelists, who will share briefly about what's going on, all the wonderful things going on in their cities, their cool cities. And then we will, then I'll ask them some questions about some of how they experience what they're doing and their visions for the future. So there we have it. Let me begin by putting some slides up so we can see the story here unfold. I assume you can all see the slides. Yes? Okay. Well, anyway, another thing I want to say is Happy Earth Day. It's a day when we celebrate the beauty of the earth. We rededicate ourselves to the earth for those who are on that path. We draw inspiration from all the people around the world doing beautiful things to make our earth and our world a better place. So happy to celebrate Earth Day with you. So with that said, let me share a little bit about what we have in mind to help make the earth a better place to live and create the future that we wish, and really see if we can move the dial around climate change action. So we call it the Cool City Challenge, empowering cities to become carbon neutral by 2030. And we call this a climate moonshot scaling strategy. Our institute, Empowerment Institute, is driving this. So let me tell you the strategy.
And David, can you push the slideshow version on the side?
I can, except that it often doesn't flow very well. I know this is not as ideal. I mean, I could try again, but it sometimes breaks down. Oh, let me try. See if I can get it to work better this time.
And then just use your arrows to push through the...
Yeah, unfortunately on Zoom, it doesn't work as well. That's why I've done it, but I'll try. We'll give it another.
Okay. It looks much better.
I know. Thank you for that, Miranda. Miranda is our director of operations. She makes everything work beautifully. So hopefully this will work better for you and me. So now I just have to, there we go. But we're already a little off. Okay, try it again. Okay, so how do we see the climate challenge? Essentially, what we see is the climate challenge is about time. We know we have a problem, Houston, with our climate, but the bigger problem is how do we get the kind of change we need in the time frame that we need to get that change before hitting irreversible ecological tipping points. So this is about speed of change and magnitude of change. So the obvious question is, where can we get the most carbon reduction in the shortest period of time? And when you look around, what you see is here I am again with the Zoom thing, so bear with me. Cities are a natural focal point because they generate 70% of our carbon emissions. And with currently available solutions, we can become carbon neutral. So it is the natural place to start. And what we also find is Miranda, I'm going to go off of this because it is causing a lot of trouble and it's going to create more trouble than it's worth. So I'm going to get out of this view. So bear with me. And I'm going to put it back in this view. Not as pretty, but it works better on Zoom. So a lesser known fact, citizens are the natural starting point within cities because we represent 70% of the city's emissions and we can mobilize an entire community. So city and citizens are where we can get the kind of traction that we're going to need in the time frame that we need it. So what solutions can create carbon neutral cities without offsets in 10 years? So what we did is we did an analysis of the different types of carbon solutions there are, carbon reduction solutions. And what we found is that there was a set of top-down solutions. People know about them. They often don't think of them as a set of solutions. And they really boil down to three: creating policy, so command and control, new technologies that get introduced into a community, and building new markets for solar or EVs or whatever. Those are the traditional top-down solutions. And they have been effective, but they are not achieving the kind of results in the time frame that we need. And then we have a set of bottom-up solutions, primarily built around what we call behavioral change solutions, which are the bottom-up opportunities where you and I, through how we live our lifestyles, have impact. That is the current state of play on how we are going to get significant carbon reductions. An interesting opportunity lies in that insight. What if we could combine top down, first of all, integrate all the top down and the bottom up, so that we could begin to create what we call a whole system solution. And then once we do that, we discover something quite profound, is that behavioral change, the bottom up, you and me and how we live our lives, can activate the whole system. Why? Because we are the drivers of policy. We elect our local officials. We are the users of technology, and we are the beneficiaries of new markets that are created to enable us to take advantage of these kinds of opportunities. So what that does, it puts us literally in the driver's seat for how we affect climate change. Instead of being sort of on the sidelines as a passenger watching this thing happen, someone else is in control, and you can name whoever the problem person is or problem institution is. We realize we have immense power if we can figure out how to fully activate that whole system. So if in fact our lifestyles are the place and our advocacy where we get the biggest opportunity for change, how do we empower citizenry in a community to change their behavior? So enter the Cool Block program. So before we get into the Cool Block program, let me talk a little bit about our definition of empowerment that our Empowerment Institute works from. Very simply, it's about enabling people to envision and create what they want in their lives and their world. So it's very much based on vision and providing the tools to enable that. We've been at this now for 40 years. Our expertise is behavioral and social change. We work with millions of people across hundreds of cities, and that's the expertise we're bringing to this adventure. So what is the Cool Block program? An individual steps forward, a block leader. They knock on their neighbors' doors, or if they are a single family household block, or they knock on their neighbors' apartment doors if they're in a multifamily dwelling, and they gather 5 to 8 households. They meet 9 times over 4.5 months, and they go through 5 topics: disaster resilience, carbon reduction, water stewardship, neighborhood livability, and empowering others. This program grows out of 30 years of research with predecessor programs that were built around each of those topics. So that's the program. What does it look like and how does it change behavior? So there's 120 action recipes as opposed to checklists, which tell you specifically step-by-step how to take an action. There's a peer support system of your neighbors that reinforce what you try to do. So you have peer pressure and peer support to follow through and to do what you want to do. There's self-directed meeting guides that enable a team to run this on their own. There's a volunteer coach who helps the teams stay on track. There's a mobile web platform where people take the actions and enter in their results. And then we integrate in local resources that help you take the actions, so it gets customized and localized. Why do people join? So that's the what. Now, why do people take the time to do this? And there are three reasons. The first is that people are seeking meaning in their lives. So this is all about values. It's not about financial incentives or disincentives. They want to create a better world for their children. When we would interview people ending their experience, they would always say, I want to make a better world for my kids. That was almost always, or my grandkids or my nephews or whoever. The second thing is they're seeking to know their neighbors. One of our secret sauces is that people want to get to know their neighbors and they don't know how to get to know their neighbors. So they're seeking community. And the third thing is they're wanting to make a difference. They're seeking agency. I want to be able to have an impact in my life, in my world. Those are the why. That's why people do this. After many years of research, we've sort of boiled this thing down and we found that's why people do this. So what kind of results have we gotten in our pilot so far? Now, no, we are now in the new phase of our work where we are getting ready to work in, well, we've already begun working in 3 new cities, but up until that moment, these are the results we had in our pilots. We worked in 5 cities, Palo Alto, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Mountain View, and Isla Vista. We were focusing on California because it's an early adopter city, and that's where we were starting our scaling work. We worked on 125 cool blocks. About 2,000 people participated. On average, they reduced their carbon footprint by 29%. They took on average 25 distinct actions. And the neighbor-to-neighbor process that I talked about earlier, where they knock on their neighbor's door, invite them to their home to hear about this program, lead an information meeting, we're getting a 45% recruitment rate across those 3 cities based on those 3 selling points. So we're very happy with the results we've achieved. We realize we have a winning proposition. That doesn't change the game around climate by itself, but it gets us a start. It gets us a beginning. So let's come back to the big question. So can we really change fast enough to create carbon neutral cities by 2030? That is the big question. And so enter the science of tipping points. Part of my work in social change over the years is a study of where you have levers for change. And tipping points is about leverage. And there are 3 types of tipping points that we work with. I'll go through each of them. The first is diffusion of innovation, and we talk about cyclogenesis and punctuate equilibrium, big words. Let me make them seem a little less daunting sounding. A man named Everett Rogers out of Stanford University studied 1,500 case studies on how new ideas and new technologies diffused. He called that the diffusion of innovation. And what he found was that 15% of the people, 15% of people, in order to get to the place you need to get to, 15% of the people is the tipping point. That's how you can begin to get the larger shift in what you're trying to achieve. And it starts with these early adopters who have a predisposition to seek out the new and have a high tolerance for experimentation. Not all social innovations are able to make it through this chasm. They have to have a lot of things going for them. But if they can, it starts diffusing on its own momentum to the early majority, who are the belongers. The late majority come along eventually because of social pressure, and then the laggards are the last group, and they don't usually participate. So diffusion of innovation is how we are designing our strategies in every way, shape, and form: early adopter cities, early adopter blocks, early adopter households, and so on. The second is what we call cyclogenesis, which grows out of the study of hurricanes, how hurricanes and energy patterns form in the natural world. And they form out of these small vortices or small eddies of energy. They don't form fully. You don't see a hurricane form fully. It starts with these small eddies of energy. And then they become smaller vortices. and they begin to combine and expand into a hurricane. And so think of each of these little vortices as cool blocks, and then cool neighborhoods, and then cool cities. And you begin to see the power of this kind of process of engaging from the small or very early place of change, the early adopter block, the early adopter neighborhood, and so on. So that's how this process is designed to spread. More to be said on that. And the third is what's called punctuant equilibrium. This grows out of the study of evolutionary biology, which is about how evolution takes place over long periods of time. So over long periods of time, there are stable systems. And these systems can be happening for decades or centuries or millennia, depending upon what we're talking about. But at a certain moment in time, there is the potential for a punctuation equilibrium, and a radical shift can take place. And what enables that in evolutionary biology is what's called an extinction level threat. So 800 million years ago, there was the Cambrian revolution that came out of the fact that there was too much oxygen in the air, and single cell organisms had to combine into multicellular organisms, not unlike what we have to do today around carbon. And so they did, and they started a whole new set of multicellular organisms and began a whole new evolution in the species. So we have to do something similar because we're facing an extinction level threat. And what is it that we have to activate? We have to activate our creativity, our intelligence, our will to be able to respond at the speed and magnitude of change needed. What we are proposing and trying to do and are doing is speeding up time by 3x. We're trying to get to 2030, what the UN says we need to get to by 2050. And they now realize that date is still quite long from where we need to, quite far into the future from what is real. That's what they thought was politically acceptable when they made that goal. But 2030 is in fact what science is telling us we actually have to achieve. This is part of how we do that. And we're watching this happen. We're watching it happen in the last year or two around climate change has tipped. And we are recognizing that that equilibrium has been punctured, and we are now moving to another stable state. We're in that middle where all the action is, all those up and down lines. So can we do this? Can we do this? The question is unknown. We've seen a few examples in fighting wars, putting a person on the moon. We believe we can do this. We have designed a strategy to do this. Let me share more about that strategy. So how does Cool Blocks help cities become carbon neutral by 2030? So see those little people in red, those are the Cool Block leaders. And what you're going to see is the evolution of a Cool Block into a cool city and beyond. So as you start to activate these block leaders, you're building leadership capacity, and specifically what we call climate action capacity. These block leaders are multi-dimensional threats, if you will. They can do a lot of things. They can activate their block, they can move to a neighborhood, they can activate their city council. So this leadership capacity in climate action is significant. It's not just that we're building cool blocks. And you'll start to see this meter start to turn to the right as we build more capacity, which is what the whole cool block part of our strategy is about. And then we move to a cool neighbor, which is approximately 10 cool blocks. And now we can do things we can't do at a block level. Now we can do microgrids. Now we can build sort of, neighborhood level transportation systems. We can do community agriculture. We can do a whole sort of thing, a series of things that we couldn't do at the block level. We have different kinds of benefits of scale. And then we move to approximately 10 cool neighborhoods, which are what we call cool districts. And now we can do things where we are way more capable than we could if we were just a block. And now we can build new economic models. We can start to figure out how we build, significant resiliency, because every level below it is organized. So we have very coherent blocks and neighborhoods now organized in a district. So you can see a scaling model that has a lot of potential for profound transformation, all from the bottom up, where the power is in the system. And then we move to a cool city. And a cool city, we define as a minimum of 400 cool blocks. And why 400 cool blocks? Well, that's approximately 10,000 people. It's a vanguard. It's a tipping point. When you have 10,000 people in a community on board in this way, knowledgeable, skillful, committed, carbon literate, you have power. You have power to change things. Way less than that. We've seen in some of our cities, 10, 15 can shift a city council rather quickly, not to mention build demand for new technologies. And you keep going, you have a cool region. So now we're talking Orange County, Los Angeles County, Sonoma County, three of the counties we're working in, or the Bay Area, or Southern California, but we're now talking region. So now you have multiple cool cities. And then you move to a cool state. And that's why we've honed in on California, because California is so advanced and we're looking to have a cool California phenomenon. We're already in partnership with the state of California. So that's the vision. And you keep seeing this evolution of leadership at each level of scale. So let's look at how this works on the ground. And let's look at transit, which is the biggest contributor to a city's carbon footprint. And let me show you how top down and bottom up fit together. So household choices start the transformation. So demand side drives supply side, as is the way of economics and the way of change. So people after they go through cool block, they're walking more, they're biking more, they're sharing rides, they're switching to EVs and e-bikes, they're using public transit. That's how they're getting 29% carbon footprint reduction, among other things. That's creating demand for new policies. Now there's new demand for sidewalks or car-free zones or bike lanes or charging stations or incentives for EVs or new transit options. There's now potential demand for a very serious commitment to transit in cities, for example, which usually does not have a lot of demand and a lot of budget and a lot of commitment, because there's often a concern there won't be a market. We'll put all this money together and we won't be able to produce an outcome, which in turn creates more top-down investments as people drive and as people now are participating more and changing their behaviors, and this virtuous cycle begins. And it goes on. Less parking required, spaces freed up for housing, public spaces, parks. Some of the California housing crisis starts to get reduced because we're now not needing as much space for some of these things that we've had to spend resources on before. For example, all the road infrastructure costs and all the road expenditures. We have higher density and walkability. People are healthier. And then it moves into what we call a whole system phenomenon, where when you start to transform one system, you start to recognize that they impact all the other systems. In fact, they're all connected. It's a community that needs to connect with all these issues. We're now dealing with buildings and land use and wellness and resilience and so on, jobs and economy. So once you start to connect the dots, you start to recognize the power of what can happen when a whole system is activated. And it starts from the bottom, and it can start with any part of the system. Transit happens to be a very high leverage version of it. So now let's look at how we translate that into a carbon neutral city. So what we have is a need to, once again, work with the fractal of whole system design. So we have to bring together five distinct components to get to this carbon neutral city. We need to figure out how to integrate the technology, the top-down change from that. We need to figure out how it's going to be paid for. We need to figure out what the policies are. We need to figure out how community engagement works. We need to figure out how all these systems work together. And then we need to get a synergy effect so that these aren't siloed. So this is a key piece of how we're organizing what we call our Moonshot Climate Action Plan strategies, which is the top-down process that will be taking advantage of the bottom-up demand we're building through Cool Block. Another thing that's happening while this is occurring is that we are also working on the affective side of things. So we're building greater trust. There's greater community cohesion. We're building what we call second order change leadership capacity. Second order change is part of this whole model of social change 2.0 that I work with and we work with, which is transformative social change. We're building that capacity literally block by block. And all that's needed to achieve a carbon neutral city. And we've built in, from an empowerment point of view, all of these key ingredients. So when you understand the nature of empowerment, what empowers someone to change, it starts with a compelling vision. The more compelling, the better. A carbon neutral city by 2030 is a compelling vision. Getting to know your neighbors is a compelling vision. Getting to feel a sense of being a leader in the world around an issue that matters for human survival is a compelling vision. Then we have innovation driven by necessity. An extinction level threat is demanding innovation. We have to innovate or else we don't keep the planet, or we don't have a very high quality of life if we do keep it. And then we have an idea whose time has come. And there are two ideas that I think whose time has come that we are talking about here. The first idea is a carbon neutral city by 2030. We've been talking about that. A second idea whose time has come is believing in ourselves as a human species, that we actually have the power to change, and feeling hopeful as opposed to despairing about our future. That's an idea whose time has come, and we are trying to activate both of those. And the last is a catalyst from the bottom. If you can create capacity for individuals through how they live and through how they advocate to be able to have the kind of impact that this model is aspiring to, you have profound power to actually enable people to engage. So those are the empowerment ingredients. And then we have what we call our moonshot beliefs. Why do we call this a climate moonshot strategy? Because this is not something anyone's ever done. No one even thinks it's possible. So this is a moonshot by every definition of the term. And what do you need for a moonshot? You need audacity. This is a bold goal, the boldest goal on the planet, carbon neutral, not even just carbon neutral by 2030, without offsets. That means we don't have any escape mechanism when we'll just, okay, we'll get as far as we can, they'll pay for the rest just by offsetting. This is asking us to go all the way, which means we have to really think it very creatively. And we have to think also very abundantly. This may cost a lot of money. Where are we going to find the resources? So we need an abundance mindset. We need an abundance of resources. We have to figure out how to get way out of the box. Most cities don't think at that level, which is why this is a multi-sector team. It's not just city governments. It's a public-private civic sector collaboration. So they can start to think more abundantly about where things like money and other kinds of resource talent can come from. Then you have the agency, empowering people to believe in themselves, empowering blocks to see a possibility they've never seen before and feel a sense of agency, empowering community to believe in itself and see possibilities it hasn't seen, activating the whole of a community. And then the alchemy, which is when all this kind of whole system thinking comes together. Those are our moonshot beliefs that are embedded in this. We selected California to lead the way because of these different factors. There's an urgency. There's no place on the planet that is experiencing more climate disruptions than California. There's a deeply rooted environmental ethos. We celebrate what happened in Santa Barbara in 1969, which is where the modern Earth Day began and where the modern environmental movement began in California. There's immense political will. Gavin Newsom, the whole legislature, cities, There's a number of cities committed to carbon neutrality. These 3 cities are leading the charge, but there are other cities that are also on that path. And since we've begun, there have been a number of new cities that have become committed to carbon neutrality. There's funding from the state to invest. There's a lot of know-how, policy, and innovation-wise, and the state itself has set a carbon neutrality goal of 2035. So it is leading the charge for any large, shall we say, political jurisdiction. So what does the scaling mechanism look like across California and beyond? So now we're getting into the Cool City Challenge. So in June of last year, 40 cities across California went through a rigorous, many months long application process. One of the people who you'll hear from in a little while, named Linda Fisher from Petaluma, participated in that from day one, from actually before day one, and as did the other cities soon thereafter. The winning cities were Los Angeles, Irvine, and Petaluma. So very large city, 4 million. A medium-sized city, 3.3, I think 300 and something thousand, and Petaluma about 60,000. So different size cities, so we can learn different things. They each won $1 million from our Empower Institute, plus our consulting support. They had to form multi-sector teams, as I said earlier, public, private, and civic sector. Some of those Moonshot team members are actually on this call. You'll hear from 2 of them. And they had a pretty high bar to get over. They had to recruit 200 Cool Block leaders before they were even awarded any funding. And they had to recruit 25 community partner organizations. This is not a walk in the park. This is serious commitment to be able to even apply. Well, they can apply, but to win, that's what they had to accomplish. And they had to have a city council resolution to become carbon neutral by 2030 without offsets. One of the cities had already done that, but the other 2 cities actually had to do that and did that as a way of actually applying. Amazing. We're going to launch phase 2. Our plan is the fall. Right now, we're in a steep learning curve. There's an immense amount of learning to do. So we're not feeling we have to rush to get to the next round of cities, but we will be planning the next round in the fall. We'll be awarding $1 million up to 25 California cities, 25 across America, plus our consulting, to be determined how many cities will actually make the cut. But that's what we are setting up as our capacity for the next round. That could shift a little bit, but right now that's our thinking. We're going to be creating what we call a Cool City Challenge Innovation Fund to support Moonshot breakthrough ideas in the city. So as they're building their Moonshot climate action plans, we want to start investing to help grow the most powerful innovation ideas. And then we will be testing it across the 3 cities. So that's our innovation fund. We have pledging of money for these 2 things right now. And then phases 3 and 4 will be to launch 100 more cities in 2023 and 100 more cities in 2024, in approximately that spread, 25 in California, 75 in America, 100 worldwide. So that'll get us 250 cool cities across the planet. And each of those cities will be serving as what we call teaching cities to diffuse this climate moonshot knowledge and experience to 10 more cities. Some of those cities have already, some of our cool cities have already begun reaching out to neighboring cities. That'll bring 2,500 cities on board worldwide, which is 25% of the cities over 50,000 people. So it's a tipping point in its own right. So here's what it looks like to save the planet, if you will. Carbon neutral California cities by 2030, carbon neutral America cities and planet cities by 2030, carbon neutral California by 2035, led through the process of these carbon neutral cities, and a carbon neutral planet by 2040, not 2050. And 2050 wasn't a carbon neutral planet at all anyway. It was just a set of goals. So we have a very aggressive, a very audacious vision of what we want to achieve. So let me end with a quote from Rilke, a poet who is got activism roots in his being. Again and again in history, some people wake up. They have no ground in the crowd, and they move to broader, deeper laws. They carry strange customs with them and demand room for bold and audacious action. The future speaks ruthlessly through them. They change the world. So those that want to learn more about our work, you can go to coolcity.earth and you can learn more, and you'll see a variety of different resources there also if you're interested in applying or just learning more about what we're doing. So with that said, let me see if there are any questions that anyone might have about anything that I said. And if you're around, do turn on your video so we can feel a sense of community, because we are all about community here. And welcome a lot of friends that I know. So anybody have a question? You can just do the hand raise thing. Do you know how to do the hand raise thing? I think it's under, where is that? Under reactions, I think you can just raise your hand. Yeah. And or I think I see everyone, so you just raise your hand in general. So any questions or comments from anyone? Feel free. And we also invite the Facebook people to also ask their questions, and Miranda can engage them with, or gather their questions, and I will react. So yes, Harvey, I see your hand, please.
Yes, thank you. I understand, I have a friend who's very active in Petaluma, working with climate change. You know, one of you was, is there something outstanding about that rather small city of 60,000 that's been so effective?
Well, you're going to find out why. I don't see if Delinda's smiling there. So Delinda, about, at least on my screen, two people over from you, will talk about what is special about Petaluma. There's a lot going on in Petaluma. It is a little city that could for planet Earth. So
Harvey, what's your friend's name?
you're being asked, Harvey, what your friend's name is. Delinda will speak in a few minutes.
His name is Philip Pascal, P-A-S-C-A-L.
Yep. Thank you.
Do you know him? Do you know him, Delinda?
Of course. It's a small city.
Delinda's a city council person, and she's going to speak in a few minutes about why Petaluma. So Mary Emily, please.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is just a logistical question. How many doors do you have to knock on to get 8 yeses?
Great question. I love a logistical question like that. So here's what we found. Well, Sue Lebec, who is our platform director, probably knows the precise answer. I will give you a general answer, but Sue, why don't you answer that question?
Hi, can you hear me? So the number of doors you knock on actually is exactly the number of doors on your block. Whatever the size of your block, you knock on every single door, because part of this is, I mean, a huge part of this is inclusion. It's not cherry picking teams from our friends or our, people of like minds. This is the people who live next door to you. So this is super, super important. When sometimes what your block isn't completely straightforward because you're in a very dense area, or if you're in a rural area, or something in between. So in those cases, we say kind of a rule of thumb, it's about 35 contiguous households is a rule of thumb for defining a block. And just by knocking on their door, and then if you try 3 times and can't reach them and you leave them a flyer, you have already begin to make an impact, because each neighbor finds out, oh my gosh, something's going on here. Whether they ever participate themselves or not, they know that something is happening, and that is part of the power of what you're doing.
Thank you, Sue. Now there's a very detailed answer. Sue's good at detailed answers. Let me add to that a little bit. Let me give you the sort of strategy. So the end game is you have to form a house of 5 to 8, a team of 5 to 8 households. So that means that you've got to get it to boil down to that number of households to ultimately say yes. So based on our pilot, about 67% of the people whose doors are knocked on say, yes, I will come, based on the selling points that the script represents. Approximately that number, something in the 60 percentile actually come. And approximately that number is what ends up coming and joining a team. So that boils down to, at least in our pilot, 45%. So that's the dynamic. Now you can also do a team for less than 5 households, but 5 to 8 is the ideal number. And by the way, you can do Cool Blocks. You just have to go to coolblock.org and you can start Cool Blocks if you want. You don't have to go through the whole Cool City Challenge process. Okay, other questions? A lot to take in. Charlene, I think if I'm getting your name stated.
Charlene, hi, everybody.
Charlene, sorry.
That's okay. It's a little different. Happy Earth Day. So on my block, everyone's got a gate. Some are the electronic ones. Some are with the, oh God, lock. So anyway, and then there are dogs. So there's going to be a lot of flyers for me at the beginning. So and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this in the training, right? I signed up as a block leader. So, but I haven't had my training
You
yet.
signed up as a block leader where, in what city?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm
Oh,
in
cool.
South Central or South LA.
Fantastic.
So
Yay.
anyway,
Congratulations.
so yeah. All right. So putting the flyer out, I'm thinking you got to be cool on what information you put on it, because you got your email or your phone number. So then where do you put the flyer so somebody doesn't just snatch it and then somebody else calling you? You know what I mean? So
I love all your
maybe-
questions.
yeah. So
Let me also work with some of your
oh,
assumptions.
I don't know how to work this Zoom thing. I'm sorry. I'm all over this camera.
You're
Oh
doing
God.
great.
Okay, there we go.
Doing so great. So thank you for saying yes. And why did you say yes? Why did you just decide to be a block leader?
Well, let me think. Okay, so I'm back. I came back home to take care of mom, right? So I left LA in '79. I didn't come back till 2013. Of course, I came every year to visit, and I brought my daughter and blah blah blah. But to live in LA, and it was in San Diego, so it wasn't like I was in the middle of nowhere. But there's a big difference between San Diego and LA. So I moved back. People hadn't seen me, so they didn't really know me. The neighborhood kind of changed. There was a few neighbors, but it's really changed. It's bilingual. And there was a guy living with my mom, and he kind of turned the neighborhood against me because he was trying to take my mother's house. So anyway, he's gone. My mom's in heaven. That's a lot. You know, I got all that stuff straight. But here I am.
Good.
And so, I took French in high school to challenge my father, and that was a mistake. I should have taken Spanish. I don't speak either one. So now my neighborhood's bilingual, and so I'm going to need a partner anyway. So I guess, God, that was a long Edith.
That was a long introduction. but we have
Realization. I'm sorry.
We're so eager to hear the why. So tell us.
Okay. So I just want people to get to know me and trust me. But then, because I think I'm going to be living there, I don't see me moving anytime soon. I'm back home, and it is a little bit of a culture shock to move back home, but it's okay. So that's the thing. It's just getting to know the neighbors, and just all of us getting to know one another. I like walking around, but I'm checking the Citizen app to make sure that, I'm going to be okay. So I don't know if you guys know what the Citizen app is, but we have a lot of activity. And I know that's all around the country, but over here is a lot of activity. And I don't want to be mugged for like $3. I mean, gads. And I don't have a car. So walking is important to me. And I like getting to know everything. And where I came from, which was, I know I said San Diego, it's a little smaller, but I was
I'm gonna
walking
put you
around
on
there.
pause. I'm gonna put you on pause here. You answered the question very thoroughly. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Too much
No,
coffee.
it's fantastic. I love
I'm
the
gonna go mute.
backstory. But let me offer a few thoughts.
Okay.
So why is I want to get to know my neighbors? And there's another version of that. I want my neighbors to get to know me. That's not one of the ones we usually hear. I love that. And you're new in the neighborhood and you want to feel a sense of community. So thank you for the why. Let me speak to some of your questions. It is challenging when you have gates. That is one of we don't really have great answers for when you have a gate, because the idea is to actually make connection with your neighborhood and with your neighbors in particular. The flyer, aside from maybe people being so excited about this, they want to take the flyer and read it and come to your meeting anyway, which is usually not the case, because usually you have to make a connection. So I would say in the training, you raise those questions. In LA, we've seen that issue a bit, and there are some best practices. So Lisa and Andy, who will be your trainers, will guide you on how to address that issue and support you through that process. But a flyer is one puzzle piece for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure Lisa's one of the reasons why I found out about this, because somehow I ended up in the NCSA, that's a Sustainability Alliance, and that's
Right,
what
of course.
really brought me to this.
There you have it.
I gave you an answer that I had no idea that's what it was when you asked me. That was not my intention. So,
But that actually
here we
is
are. I learned something.
there,
Huh?
and so did we. I love that you're interested in getting to know your neighbors, and you're interested in your neighbors getting to know you.
And it's a safety issue too. We do have a lot of stuff, but I want to feel comfortable. I want to feel like, do I want to live here, or do I want to sell my property and move somewhere else? And, you know, I told some folks that used to represent this area, I told her, she's a congresswoman, I'm not gonna say her name, but she's a tough cookie. And I promised her over the years that if I did come back to LA, I would stay for that street and do the best that I could to be a part of it. And so I want to stick to that. And I don't want to not buy,
Let me offer
you know
one
what I mean? I want to feel proud that that's where I was born and raised. My parents brought me there in 1957 and I came back in 2013, and I want to see if I can make a difference, and I don't want to be afraid of my neighborhood. So maybe that's another reason too.
I would say, and final thought, because I want to invite others to share. So, but here's another thought for you. And we've seen this, you know, over the course of the last 30 years, we must have had, I've lost track, well over 10,000 of these teams in different iterations in a lot of difficult neighborhoods like what you're describing. And what we found is that the best way to create the neighborhood of your dream is literally to create it. Otherwise, it will be taken over by people who just are not necessarily, you know, good citizens, if you will. And so if you want to live on that block, create the block into a cool block. I mean, that's a great way. You actually have direct control. You're not a victim to just what's happening on that block. You can control your destiny on that block, and you are doing that. So thank you. Okay, looks like Herman. Hi, Herman. Welcome.
Hi, David. So I'm a newcomer to this, and I just have a quick comment. I'm a newcomer to Cool City. I'm a newcomer to Cool Block. And I just want to comment that I find this an absolutely extraordinary approach. I'm impressed. I am moved. I think it has already proven tremendous, you know, impact, and I can't wait to see the impact it's going to have as you move it into these cities. The thing that excites me most is that it just has a logic to it that makes a lot of sense, right? You get your neighbors together, they get comfortable with each other, they get to know each other. You know, people like Charlene start to feel at home again, connected. And then I think the thing that really excites me is what comes beyond that, right? How do we unleash a level of intelligence we can't even quite yet think about that allows people to say, wait a minute, I have a solution to acidification in the ocean, and somebody else in another city has a similar kind of thing. And all of a sudden, this process delivers really significant solutions, even beyond, you know, just taking care of ourselves and each other. but to really become expansive in terms of the kind of innovations. And you spoke to that. You know, one of the goals is to create really extraordinary innovation, because that's what we need in order to, you know, to save ourselves and this planet. So I just want to mention that. I'm
Well, I
really-
appreciate you affirming that, and I know that you do work in that space, and we've begun that conversation. So I look forward to continuing that conversation. And let me just speak to your comment. I talked about this notion of transformative social change. So this is a program built around the notion of what we call second order change or transformative social change. It's built around the notion of empowerment, which is a subset of that larger model. And when you build that kind of capacity, and you don't even realize you're building the capacity, people just go through Cool Block and all of a sudden they realize, we know how to cooperate. We know how to organize ourselves into effective behavioral change pods. We know how to actually engage with our city. They start understanding a whole set of capabilities they didn't realize they had, and they didn't even know they are having just by going through this experience they end up with. And then they say, what can we do to make our neighborhood better? What can we do to make our city better? And so this is what we call unleashing social creativity. I call this the X factor in the whole cool city phenomenon. And then cool cities start to unleash social creativity. I mean, you're going to hear some of that as you listen to some of the folks in a little while who are representing those cities, including Petaluma, which I know you visited recently and got inspired by. So yet another part of the Petaluma effect that our friend Andy calls the Petaluma effect. So thank you, Herman. I look forward to seeing where we might find some opportunities to collaborate. So other questions I want to see before I move on to Mary Emily for a second round. Is there any other questions or comments anyone may have? And also, Miranda, are there any people on Facebook that are asking any questions or having any comments that I can react to?
Not right now, just supportive people, but not questions.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, Mary Emily, go for it.
Oh, no, my hand was up from before.
Oh, okay,
Wasn't taken down.
you can take it down. Fair enough.
Oh, sorry.
So last round of questions or comments. So I can start asking you a few questions or comments, and then we can jump into the panel. So how many of you are from either Petaluma, Irvine, or LA? Just raise your hand. Great. So just say what city you're from. I'd love to see who's representing what cities so we can take
Los
advantage.
Angeles.
So why don't I call on people? Just raise your hand and then I'll just call on you. That's probably easier so you don't have to call. So Mary Emily, you're from where?
Los Angeles, Silver Lake
Oh,
area.
Silver Lake. And Betsy? What?
Los Angeles, Mid-City.
Oh, nice. And Dimitri, I don't know if I'm saying your name right, probably not.
No, that's correct. Dimitri, Irvine.
Irvine, great. Anyone else from any of these cities? Jocelyn,
I'm from Los Angeles, Echo Park, historic town.
and I saw you in an interview. There was a great article about you, right?
Right, right.
So you have to tell your story in a moment, but let me hear from everyone else. And I want you to tell your story because you're a Cool Block graduate. You have a unique distinction. Christine, where are you from?
Los Angeles, La Crescenta.
Oh, great. Anyone else? I see Thomas has put his name Irvine. Okay, so you don't have to speak, but we already see that.
Yeah.
But I'll ask you a question. Where in Irvine are you from, Thomas?
I'm in a neighborhood called College Park within Irvine, 1970s neighborhood.
Oh, nice. Now, is that near the university?
No, it's pretty far from there, on the other side of town.
Okay, got it. Is there anyone else? Okay. Oh, yes, Linda.
Yeah, I'm from Irvine, and I am from Central Park West, which is quite a large complex of condominiums and apartments.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So
There's
Jocelyn,
two more with their hands up.
oh, I'm sorry. It looks like Jocelyn has a friend using her same.
That's right. It's my colleague, James Castillo. And I don't know where he went, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
James.
Yeah, I live in LA, historic Filipino town. I work with Tita Jocelyn and part of the Codes Coalition, Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability, and we're putting together the action plan for a sustainable planet. And we're launching our own local initiative with Jocelyn to kind of like translate that into a micro, kind of an institute, have a hybrid school and tie it in hopefully with Cool Blocks to really scale the knowledge transfer and
Yep.
connect the dots.
Where's Herman? There it is, Herman, happening right in front of your own eyes.
Oh.
I was just telling Herman saying he's excited by that feature, and I'm saying there's a case study happening in front of our own eyes. So Jocelyn, you have the last word before the panel starts. You were a Cool Block leader. You were featured in this wonderful article. Tell us what your experience was like to go through Cool Block.
Yeah, well, I was part of the pilot in 2016 to 2017. And like, I forget who said, you actually do have to knock on all the doors. We had a 2-block, span, and I had a co-leader, and we got about a commitment from 8 households, and we did the 9 months of meetings. And so I certainly experienced a lot of change during that time, on my own part and on the part of other participants. That article highlighted the fact that I was able to reduce my black bin use to half. And that was amazing to me, myself. But anyway, the reason I've actually signed up to be a Cool Block leader again this round, and we'll do that maybe in September. But the reason is that obviously there are a lot of goals. This Cool Block process involves 102 actionable goals. And so there's a lot of, it's almost a huge menu of things you could act on. And obviously we maybe touched on 10 or 12 of those in 2000 at my first round. So there's still a lot of work to do.
Beautiful.
And I'm certainly committed to
You're a
the
role
long
model.
haul.
And you also said during the pandemic how your neighbors were reaching out to you. Share that.
Oh,
part.
that's right. The young millennials started calling me and trying to check on me, which was really touching. I was 74 during that article. I'm 75 now. But I mean, that was very touching because, we all, I'm sure, experienced being isolated and kind of, it was a whole disorienting time. And to have these young people reach out to me was so heartwarming and touching.
So beautiful. So just to clarify, the program is 9 meetings every 2 weeks. So it's approximately 4.5 months. In your case, you guys went on a slower path, which is also possible, but generally it's 4.5 months. So you can sort of think about that as a time frame. Okay, so thank you all for your participation. We will now move into a panel and hear from the source of where this creativity is coming from in each of the cities. We'll start with Petaluma, then Irvine, and then we'll move into LA. So let me introduce the first panelist, and I will ask her some questions. Let me just get myself oriented. First, she'll share a little bit about what's going on in Petaluma. And then the other panelists will share, and then I will ask some questions. So Delinda Fisher. So Miranda, if we can kind of get the screen set up so Delinda can be highlighted, that would be great. I will wait a moment, or maybe while you're doing that. I see me. There we are. Yay. So Delinda Fisher is a co-founder of Cool Petaluma and the co-lead of its Climate Moonshot team. This is the team charged to get the carbon neutral goal by 2030 for the city. She's a member of the City Council of Petaluma. She serves on the board of directors of Sonoma County Transportation Authority and the Regional Climate Protection Agency, among many other things. It's hard to have meetings with Delinda because she's always busy doing one meeting or another. All these beautiful things that you do, Delinda. And her background is in urban planning. So I've asked her to share 3 to 5 minutes or so, no more than 5 minutes, but up to 5 on what's happening in Petaluma. Delinda.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. Well, let me start a little bit about why Petaluma and why the Petaluma effect, maybe, if I can. So as David mentioned, we're a city of 60,000 people in southern Sonoma County. So we have the influence of San Francisco. We're a historic city on a river. So we have that sort of quaintness of our downtown and how it was developed. And it's really, we're surrounded by urban growth boundaries. Every city in Sonoma is actually surrounded by those growth boundaries. So we have contained our sprawl, if you will, as we grew through the 70s and 80s. And so it's sort of an ideal place. You know, the weather is fabulous. It's relatively flat, easy to get around, but we are incredibly threatened by wildfire. So we have become the refuge for everybody around us. There was at one point 2 years ago where we had fires surrounding our community and the effect of those. And so we become the sanctuary for people, just something about our geography, but maybe not. You know, who knows what's going to happen the next fire season. We are so incredibly threatened. So I think there's that. And then also the past 3 years have been significant changes. When I ran for council 4 years ago, we didn't even mention climate change. And then the fires started and suddenly everyone's like, oh, maybe there's a connection here. We should start talking about this. And so in the past 3 years, we declared a climate emergency. We created a climate commission. That climate commission worked with our community to create a climate framework plan. That framework plan is now being used for the update of our general plan. So it is the basis of that. And then we're in the process of creating a climate action plan. When I first met David, I got on the call in early June and he said, well, you have to have a climate plan and you have to declare a climate emergency and have a carbon neutrality by 2030. And I said, well, we have that, but we don't have a plan. He's like, you're good then. So we're in the process of developing that plan and in the very early stages of that, but it really is more than that. It really is our general plan. That is the framework that we're building to say, what are we going to look like in the next 20 years? How are we going to develop our community? And so it was sort of opportune timing, I think, that when we learned of the Cool City Challenge last year, it was like, wow, this is the missing ingredient to what we are trying to accomplish. This is really, I was just blown away when I first heard about it from David. I'm like, this is exactly what we need, which is why I grabbed a hold of it so strongly. I feel like a bulldog. What we've been able to accomplish, so as David mentioned, the requirements for the application, which was due in September, was to have 200 Cool Block leaders and 24 community partners of various sectors in the public, private, and civic sectors. And we have continued that momentum and we continue to host information meetings. And we now have over 300 Cool Block leaders. So we have not stopped from the time we submitted our application. We just pretended like we were going to win and we just kept going. And now we have over 30 community partners. I'm responsible for those. And so every week we now have a new community partner coming on board. And all of them have sort of various reasons for coming. or joining us. You know, they either have something to offer, or you know, they just want to spread the word for us. Each one is a bit unique. I might say initially too that those community partners were who helped us get the Cool Block leaders, which I don't think was mentioned. And so we're still continuing that. There are some, you know, community partners that do have a following, if you will, so an opportunity to help us get more Cool Block leaders. But really, they're coming in because they're hearing. People are coming to us because they hear about it from their neighbors, or they hear about it from their friends. And so we continue to host an information meeting once a month. And what we have learned in getting this going, so we kicked off in January, and we've so far trained over 100 Cool Blocks. And I want to give you some statistics about where we are, because remember, it's only April, and we started this in January and got off to a little bit of a slow start. But we now have 124 households who are participating. We're reporting a total of 1,176 actions that have saved a total of 377,538 pounds of carbon. And again, we are just beginning. And we've got a long way to go. We've got a weekly, so not only are our blocks forming and coming together, but our program managers are hosting a weekly coffee clatch. This week, there were 21 people there talking about it. Now our January cohort is now helping our March cohort because they now have that experience. And so there's a lot of community building that's going on. We have an upcycling party every month where we offer to have people bring their t-shirts, and we will stamp them with a cool Petaluma logo or design that our artists have created in the community. So we're really engaging people in very many ways. And what's happening in our community on top of that is that we now have a Safe Streets Coalition that has just formed, that are demanding that we do something about our infrastructure and mobility. We just had a parking workshop at our city council where we all said, we don't want to have parking. We don't want to have parking requirements any longer for developments. You know, we're done. And we had a tree planting where Sue Lebec came to join us from David's team, where we planted 152 native trees on one of our parks. So we've got a lot happening, and we're really super excited about it. So thank you, David, for
Petaluma is leading the charge. So proud of your work, Delinda. So proud of you. So proud of your community. Deeply inspiring and hopeful. So thank you. And thank you for doing it in 5 minutes. There was a lot to say in that 5-minute time frame. So let me now have Patty say a few words. Let me speak about Patty. So Patty O is our Cool Irvine program manager. So Miranda, if you can get Patty teed up while I am talking about her, that would be good. She is a trained climate reality leader, and she helps support the Orange County Climate Action Campaign to create community choice energy and strong local government climate action plans. She's a founding board member of the Asian Americans in Action, and she is a role model of community leadership at its best. Patty, tell us a little bit about Cool Irvine. What's happening?
Thank you, David. Who is this Patty? She sounds amazing. You make me sound amazing. Better than I am.
She actually is a representative of planet Earth also, I've discovered.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm beaming in from the wonderful city of Irvine. I've been a longtime resident here since college. And we're a great, we're actually, you know, we started off as a master planned community, and we're a wonderfully diverse and active community here. We often get voted, you know, safest city. And so we have a couple great things going for us. But what I'm really excited about Irvine for is that, you know, in recent years, we've really become a leader in Orange County in climate mitigation. We've had a great group coalition of environmental nonprofits, active citizens, and our mayor and our council, many of whom have been environmental champions for many years, along with the supportive community that has been advocating for climate change mitigation. So as you mentioned, our city voted to adopt community choice energy and a robust climate action plan. So when Sona, our environmental services administrator, learned of the Coal City Challenge, the community really rallied, the same community that pushed for community choice energy and a climate action plan. Everybody just kind of rallied to recruit the 200 volunteer block leaders, which allowed us to win the grant from the Empowerment Institute. So I feel like Irvine was just ripe for this. This was the natural next step for us to further our work in climate change mitigation. So here we are on this great journey.
Beautiful, beautiful. Patty, thank you. And so we'll continue on with some more questions for you, but let me now move on to Cassie. So if you can shift this over to Cassie, that would be great. Miranda. So let me say a little about Cassie. So Cassie Rasser is a member of the Cool LA Climate Moonshot team, and she's the director of the UCLA Sustainable LA Grand Challenge. And the Sustainable LA Grand Challenge, through cutting edge research, is helping transform Los Angeles into the first fully sustainable megacity in the areas of energy, water, and ecosystem health. So she is a thought leader. We are waiting for her to come online. There we go, just in time, in climate action and large system transformation, among many other things. So happy to have you on the team. Cassie.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thanks for having me here today. So I was just going to sort of share my thoughts on why I think LA is such a great place to launch the Cool City Challenge. I mean, I know people have a lot of ideas about LA, but if you haven't really spent some time here, you might not know some of the, how diverse it really is. It's just such a really unique test bed for that reason. I mean, we're a diverse city in geography, in climate, ethnicity, language. We have 4.5 million people spread across nearly 200 neighborhood councils. And so our sheer size and this amount of diversity means that we also need a really diverse strategy for addressing the climate crisis, and something that LA has been a global leader in doing over the last decade. And this isn't without its challenges, of course. Beyond Hollywood, LA is also very well known for smog and traffic and concrete and social inequities and conspicuous consumption and, of course, smog and traffic. So, in fact, I was one of the skeptics when it came to addressing climate and sustainability in LA. I'm not from here, but I lived most of my adult life in Southern California, in Irvine, actually. And when I was recruited to UCLA to run a chancellor's initiative to leverage the university's expertise and research to transform LA to the most sustainable megacity in the world by 2050, a moonshot, or as we call it, a Grand Challenge initiative that was designed around the same principles as the Cool Blocks program, I actually laughed at first and said, yeah, good luck with that, LA. But it really didn't take long for UCLA to inspire me with their moonshot thinking and optimism and vision for what Los Angeles could be, which is the same type of thinking that David brings to this program. And I've proudly called LA home for nearly a decade, and a home where I've seen a lot of impressive leadership on climate. For example, around the same time that UCLA was launching the Grand Challenge with the support of city council members and the mayor, the city already launched its Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance, and that's an organization to coordinate sustainability committees across those 200 neighborhood councils I mentioned earlier. I mean, when you're this big, it's really hard to coordinate. I come from a town of 40 people in North Dakota, so I know big and small, and this is actually a lot more difficult. So this is the same Sustainability Alliance that partnered with David and the Endowment Institute a couple of years ago, back in 2016, to pilot the Cool City Block program that we heard a little bit about earlier today from some of the attendees here. So LA has done a lot of incredible work on climate too. I'm just going to list a couple of examples because there are so many. Things have been moving so rapidly here and done on such an ambitious timeline. So they released their first sustainability plan in 2015 and embedded sustainability officers throughout the city departments to hold them accountable. They're thinking holistically and recognize the importance of our natural world in mitigating climate change, and developed, in collaboration with a lot of UCLA researchers and others, a biodiversity index, which is becoming well known around the world. And as a biologist, I can't tell you how impressed I am with this commitment. LA is indeed so much more than a concrete jungle. There's a lot of nature and biodiversity to enjoy in these city limits. They committed 100% renewable energy by 2045 initially, funded a study to figure out how to get there, and then upped their commitment to renewable energy by 2035. UCLA is working with the Department of Water and Power now to figure out how to deliver this renewable energy in a way that is equitable. And that won't present a cost burden or other unintended burdens and harms on communities and households that have historically been underserved. So we have a lot of different types of challenges here. This brings me to one of the most incredible commitments by the city in this area, and that is around climate mobilization. So inspired and led by a citywide coalition, LEAP LA, the city created the world's first climate emergency mobilization office in 2019 to embed a climate justice framework that creates leadership for Indigenous, frontline, and labor communities who are the most negatively impacted, not only by climate change, but sometimes by the policies that have been created to address it. So this new office is under the leadership of Marta Segura, who is on our Cool LA Moonshot leadership team as well. So the announcement of the Climate Emergency Mobilization Office inspired other cities in California to also declare climate emergencies, including Berkeley, other Bay Area cities, and then it spread to London, England, New York City. And as of now, LA's declaration has inspired over 2,000 municipalities around the world in a very short time. So that is when we really knew that we had far more than movies to export from LA. We had innovative and groundbreaking climate policies too. And there are so many other more impressive climate policies. I can't list them in this amount of time. So when David and the Empowerment Institute came back with the Cool City Challenge in summer of 2021, 5 years after that pilot program, LA was really ready to leverage this mobilization framework, which so perfectly aligns with the objectives of the city's Climate Emergency Mobilization Office and our ambitious climate targets that seem to be, as I said, getting more and more ambitious by the day. I can barely keep up. So Andy Schrader, who isn't with us here today, he's on vacation with his family celebrating Earth Week. He is from LA Councilmember Koretz's office, who was involved in the Cool City Block pilot program. For this effort, build an incredible moonshot team with representation from the city, from NGOs, private industry, and of course the university. So since winning the challenge along with our incredible partner cities, Petaluma and Irvine, LA has now over 220 block leaders with continued recruitment happening, with 60 of those already trained. And I'm not on the ground, so I don't have a lot of sort of personal experience in sharing around where we are today with the block leaders, but I'm super happy to see that we have block leaders in the audience today, so I'd love to hear from you.
Cassie, thank you. And let me just add one thing that you didn't share, which is quite remarkable, because there's such a long list of accomplishments the city of LA has done, but it's the first. There are 6 cities in the world that have committed to carbon neutrality by 2030 without offsets. And LA is the biggest of all of them. There's only 6 in the whole world anyway, and LA, of course, has made that commitment. So if LA, with all of that, can commit to carbon neutrality by 2030 without offsets, talk about the next wave beyond climate emergency declarations is in the making. So yeah, one more feather in your cap. Thank you, Cassie, for all you're doing. So Miranda, if you would be kind enough to put us all the different panelists on the same screen, I will ask you some questions with our remaining 10 minutes or so. That would be great. So I'm going to ask a simple question, maybe, and a difficult question. So in some ways you may have already answered this question, but just a quick go around. What inspires you most for being part of this? Like what really gets you out of bed when I think about my commitment to Cool LA or Cool Petaluma or Cool Irvine? What inspires you? Let's start with you, Cassie. We'll go opposite of how we went before?
I mean, that's a really easy question and kind of a really hard question, but I mean, I've always been inspired by leaving really the earth a better place than I found it, you know, building community, leaving something for the community. But also, I'm really inspired by the challenge and the opportunities that this climate crisis brings us. I think it's an opportunity to do things differently, to do things better. And so I think we've seen that in LA, that this crisis has really brought about a lot of opportunities that are really making LA an even more incredible city than it already is.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful sentiments. Thank you. And I remember also when you were on the LA launch event, when Annie said, like, why did you choose to join? And you said, well, you had me at Moonshot. So
I had to use the movie quote, right?
I didn't even know that was in the quote.
Totally true. Andy, you know, I'm on Andy's like speed dial, and when Andy called and said, "There's this thing, and it's a moonshot," and because I'm already working with a moonshot initiative, it's so exciting and inspiring and optimistic. It's just all the positive reasons why you do things like this, and I'm like, moonshot, like real moonshot, and I read about it, and I'm like, all right, you got me, yeah.
Thank you, Cassie. Thank you for being open to moonshots. So Patty, what inspires you most?
Oh, about this program?
Yeah.
What really resonated with me is when you talked about focusing on the vision and the solutions, because I think too often in the environmental movement, we just kind of focus on the doom and gloom, and it becomes a little depressing and alarming. So when you kind of shifted my focus, I knew, and I always tried to paint a more positive picture, but you put it in words that really made me go, aha, you know, and I had my little aha moment. And I think that's what's really motivating, you know, to focus on what's possible, you know, what we can do about it, because as you pointed out in your presentation, humans are capable of amazing things. We've achieved amazing things. And if we can just kind of focus on that vision and what's possible, I think that for me is very inspiring. And so just a shift of how we can think about it. And then of course, as Cassie said, the community part is something that I really love, because it's so exciting when we can do it together and rally as a community to achieve great things. And also, you know, just build that community again after COVID to work on something this important, you know, that to me is very exciting.
So beautiful, Patty. Thank you. And thank you for saying yes to a vision, a possibility, as opposed to being caught in all the doom, which is certainly easy to be caught in around the climate space. So, and you represent that beautifully as you tell the story to people. And that's partly why they are wanting to join. It's not just that they like the idea, they like how you represent it, and they like how you hold that energy in your being. Delinda, what inspires you most about this?
I think the community building and the fact that it is something that everybody can participate in, and that it really is making a difference. But again, back to that community building, you know, it's something to really bring us together and have this commonality that we're all working toward the same goal. You know, as a council member working on policy, you know, I used to meet with David every week, and I'd meet the day after a council meeting. I'd be just like, oh, you know, it's so slow and, you know, cumbersome, and, you know, but this is like fast, and we're just doing it and making a difference, and yeah, coming together.
So thank you for the inspiration. So now the hard question. So as you anticipate a carbon neutral LA by 2030 without offsets, or a carbon neutral Irvine by 2030 without offsets, or a carbon neutral Petaluma by 2030 without offsets, what do you anticipate to be the greatest challenge that has to be addressed? And what's your sense and vision for how you will transform that challenge? So let's start with you, Delinda.
Well, I prefer to view challenges as opportunities.
Yes, of course.
Yes. And so
challenge / opportunity for sure.
Yeah, the opportunity is, it's really about transforming our transit systems and our mobility and decarbonizing our buildings. Those are the two big opportunities. And, every time I'm behind a car on my bicycle, breathing in that, I'm like, why did we ever think this was a good idea? And so, I think those two things are the biggest challenge, and probably the decarbonizing the home or the buildings is what I see as the biggest opportunity here. And it's, I think that like your slide of, how change happens, I'm convinced that we're sort of on this trajectory and it is about to take off. Like, we're right on the edge of it. We're feeling it. And that everyone will show up to make it happen. We'll have the installers, we'll have the equipment, we'll have the financing, and that, everyone will coalesce around it because everyone understands the importance of it.
Beautiful. And so the opportunity in a nutshell is what for Petaluma?
To be even a better place to live.
Great. Patty, what is the challenge / greatest challenge / opportunity you see in the Cool City Challenge to become or the Cool Irvine to become carbon neutral by 2030 without offsets?
That's a big question. I guess it would really just be to create that public will, at the government level, at the community level, because it's going to require every sector of our community to be able to turn this around. And we've just created our modern life to be so busy and so maxed out that it's hard to undo. And that's what I love about sustainability. If we can just build things with the future in mind, then we can build things for the long term. So now how do we turn this ship around and get people to change? And that's the challenge, because some of it is out of people's control, and then we need the decision makers to have the courage to make that positive change with the long term in mind, not just the next few years. Right?
How do you see in your vision this transformation happening? Like what in particular through what we're doing with the Cool City Challenge can enable that transformation to take place?
So I think there's a lot that we can glean from the program, and that's what I love. It's creating that empowerment in people that, yes, it's tough. It's hard to try something different. It's hard to follow through on the program. But keeping that vision on why it's important, why they felt the motivation to do that in the first place, instead of just being focused on the limitations. And so I feel like there's the model that we're creating with Cool Block from the ground up. I feel like that will empower people, educate people, and then hopefully they can help create some of that public will to give the people at the top the impetus to change.
Great answer. Thank you. So coming back to what inspired you, which is a sense of vision, that's the secret sauce that we use, and that empowers people to act. Cassie, you have the last word.
I mean, there are a lot of challenges, or like Delinda said, I like to also say opportunities. I think one is definitely financial. I'm not going to speak to that because that's a whole other, that's a whole other topic. But I think one of the challenges in LA especially is doing this in a way that's equitable and just, because we have incredible diversity, like I said, and really different types of communities, where you have communities that are so affluent, everyone already has solar and their batteries and their Teslas, and they're all plugged in, and they're like, what? Like, we got it, we're doing it. That is not the case for a majority of LA. And so how do you improve building efficiency and and allow others to benefit from rooftop solar, and how do you make this affordable so that the burden doesn't fall on those communities, et cetera. I think that inherent within the program, you have, some solutions there for that particular challenge, because this is about making plans and building capacity in neighborhoods that are neighborhood specific. So every neighborhood needs a different thing, right? So some neighborhoods are going to be more concerned about water conservation, and other neighborhoods are going to be more concerned about resiliency to wildfire, because we've got it all. We've got mountains, we've got the coast, we've got, all of it. So this really helps in that way, because there isn't a one Band-Aid or one policy fits all for something this diverse. And we definitely have the political will here. So doing it in a way that can address the uniqueness of the different communities, I think is a big challenge.
Beautiful. Great answer about the neighborhoods and the ability to customize. So some worlds, they call it mass customization, right? So you have something that can scale up, but it can be customized by block and by neighborhood to the unique issues. And all the answers are sort of a composite answer to the, how do we transform these challenges? And we have you, right? The Grand Challenge Wizard. So you're going to be part of that solution too, with LA and all that you guys bring from your beautiful university.
Absolutely.
And all the wise and intelligent people that you engage with. So my friends, we have reached our wishing hour for Planet Earth, goodwill for Planet Earth, wishing it a beautiful Earth Day. Thank you for spending your Earth Day with us, a part of your Earth Day. I wish you a beautiful Earth Day. If you are interested in this for your city, go visit coolcity.earth. If you're interested in this for your block, visit coolblock.org. If you have any questions, just reach out to us along the way. If we didn't have time to answer them or new questions came up. And let's say a special prayer right now for our beautiful Earth, that it will flourish and be all that we want it to be. And we have this blessed experience of living in such a beautiful world, albeit it needs a lot of help from all of us. So thank you. And I wish you a beautiful day and take good care. Bye.